Gale Eugene Sayers was born on May 30th, 1943, in Wichita, Kansas. From the very beginning, his life seemed destined for greatness, though perhaps not without pain. Known to many as the Kansas Comet, Sayers would become one of the most electrifying players in the history of the National Football League, even if his professional career would be tragically cut short. His impact on the game, however, would last far beyond the years he played. Sayers grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, after his family moved there during his childhood. It was in Omaha that he first began to shine as an athlete. Attending Omaha Central High School, he quickly established himself as a prodigy in multiple sports. In football, he was virtually untouchable. His raw speed, elusiveness, and ability to read defenders set him apart. But he wasn't just fast, he was graceful, intelligent, and had a rare gift for making even the most seasoned defenders look foolish. Off the football field, Sayers was a track and field star. He set a Nebraska state record in the long jump and dominated sprint events with an effortless stride that would later become a hallmark of his football runs. Colleges across the country sought him out, but Sayers ultimately chose to stay close to home, attending the University of Kansas. At Kansas, Gale Sayers became a collegiate phenomenon. Playing for the Kansas Jayhawks from 1962 to 1964, he earned All-American honors twice and was one of the most feared offensive weapons in college football. His playing style was mesmerizing. When he touched the ball, the crowd stood in anticipation, knowing something magical could happen at any moment. He rushed for over 2,600 yards during his college career and added nearly 2,000 more on kickoff and punt returns. But it wasn't just the stats that made Sayers legendary, it was the way he played. He ran like a ghost through defenders, changing direction with such fluidity that it often looked like he was gliding on air. Sayers' performances earned him national recognition, and by the time the 1965 NFL Draft approached, he was considered one of the top prospects in the country. He was selected in the first round by the Chicago Bears with the 4th overall pick in the NFL Draft, and also taken in the first round by the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFL Draft. Ultimately, he chose to sign with the Bears and begin his journey in the National Football League. The transition from college to pro football can be brutal for even the most talented athletes, but Sayers was ready. In his rookie year with the Bears in 1965, he stunned the league. In just his first season, he scored an astonishing 22 touchdowns, 14 rushing, 6 receiving, 1 punt return, and 1 kickoff return. Perhaps the most iconic moment of that season, and arguably of his entire career, came on December 12, 1965, when the Bears played the San Francisco 49ers in a rain-soaked game at Chicago's Wrigley Field. That day, Sayers scored 6 touchdowns, tying an NFL record that still stands. He ran with such precision and unpredictability that defenders simply couldn't catch him. It was a performance so dominant, so surreal, that even opposing fans stood to applaud him. Sayers was named the NFL Rookie of the Year and earned his first of 5 Pro Bowl selections. He had become a superstar overnight, dazzling fans and overwhelming opponents with a blend of speed, vision, and balance rarely seen on the football field. The comparisons were immediate. Many wondered if they were watching the next Jim Brown or someone even greater. But for all the acclaim he received, Sayers remained humble. He was a quiet and thoughtful man, one who carried himself with dignity on and off the field. He never gloated, never boasted. He let his play speak for itself. Behind the scenes, though, he was also intensely driven, a perfectionist who trained relentlessly to stay at the top of his game. In 1966, Sayers continued his dominance, though the Bears as a team struggled. Despite defenses focusing all their attention on him, he managed to rush for over 1,200 yards and added another 500 yards receiving. He was named first-team All-Pro once again. But even more than his stats, it was his presence on the field that demanded respect. Opposing coaches game planned for him. Defenders feared him. Teammates trusted him. It wasn't just his athleticism that made Gale Sayers special, it was his mind. He understood the game deeply, reading blocking patterns, identifying weaknesses in defensive setups, and making decisions in a split second that would leave analysts in awe. Watching him return punts was like watching an artist at work. Every juke, every cut, was part of a larger choreography that only he could see. But as brilliant as he was, the first hints of tragedy began to creep into his story. In 1968, after 3 stunning seasons, Sayers suffered a devastating knee injury, a torn ACL and MCL, that threatened to end his career. At the time, such an injury was often considered a death sentence for athletes, especially running backs. Doctors were unsure if he would ever play again. The pain was immense, both physically and emotionally. For someone who had relied so heavily on his agility, speed, and sudden movements, the idea of losing that was unbearable. Yet Gale Sayers was not finished. What followed was one of the most inspirational comebacks in NFL history. He underwent grueling rehab, working tirelessly to regain his form. He was no longer the same explosive runner, but he adapted. He learned how to run smarter, how to use his vision and patience instead of relying solely on speed. And in 1969, he returned to lead the league in rushing with 1,032 yards. He was awarded the NFL Comeback Player of the Year, and though he was no longer the Kansas Comet in the purest sense, he had shown the world the strength of his spirit. It's also during this period that Sayers became known for something beyond football, his remarkable friendship with fellow Bears player Brian Piccolo. Their bond, forged during years of competition and mutual respect, transcended race and became a powerful symbol of unity during the civil rights era. When Piccolo was diagnosed with cancer in 1969, Sayers stood by him every step of the way. In one of the most emotional moments in sports history, Sayers accepted the George Halas Courage Award and told the world, "I love Brian Piccolo, and I'd like all of you to love him too. Tonight, when you hit your knees, please ask God to love him." That quote, and the story behind it, would later be immortalized in the 1971 movie Brian's Song, where Billy D. Williams portrayed Sayers. The film touched millions and introduced a new generation to the heart and humanity of Gale Sayers. It's rare when a person's character outshines even their athletic gifts, but for Sayers, it was just a reflection of who he had always been, a deeply loyal, compassionate human being. By 1970, however, injuries once again took their toll. His knee never fully recovered, and he began to experience additional problems, including injuries to his other leg. The next 2 seasons were plagued by physical setbacks, and despite multiple attempts to come back, it became clear that his body would no longer allow him to play the game the way he once had. In 1971, at just 28 years old, Gale Sayers officially retired from professional football. Though his career had lasted only 7 seasons and effectively just 5 as a full-time player, Sayers had left an indelible mark on the game. He rushed for 4,956 yards and 39 touchdowns and added nearly 3,200 return yards and another 8 touchdowns in special teams play. But again, it wasn't the numbers that defined him. It was the poetry of his play, the sense that you were watching something transcendent every time he touched the ball. Gale Sayers may have retired from the NFL at the age of 28, but his story didn't end with the game. In fact, many would argue that his legacy only deepened in the years following his football career. The same humility, strength, and grace that defined his time on the field followed him into every arena of his life, through triumph, through tragedy, and into the hearts of fans and communities across America. After officially retiring from football in 1971, Sayers returned to his alma mater, the University of Kansas, to complete his undergraduate degree. In a move that revealed his commitment to growth and education, he later earned a master's degree in educational administration from Southern Illinois University. Sayers was always more than just an athlete. He was intelligent, thoughtful, and driven by a desire to contribute meaningfully beyond the gridiron. His next steps led him to a series of successful ventures, including broadcasting and business. He worked as a sports commentator for a time, sharing his insights and passion for the game, but his most impactful post-football endeavor came in the world of technology. In 1984, Sayers founded Sayers Computer Source, a technology consulting firm based in the Chicago area. Under his leadership, the company flourished, growing into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that served a wide range of corporate and government clients. This success in business demonstrated yet again that Gale Sayers was more than an athlete. He was a thinker, a leader, and an example of post-career success for professional players who often struggle with life after sports. Through his company, Sayers also made it a priority to hire and train minorities and underrepresented individuals in the tech field, quietly becoming a champion for diversity in an industry where such efforts were still rare. But Sayers also remained deeply involved in charitable work and community engagement. He was a frequent speaker at schools, churches, and civic events, where he often talked about perseverance, integrity, and the importance of education. His relationship with the Brian Piccolo Cancer Research Fund remained strong throughout his life, and he continued to speak about the bond he had shared with his late friend. Sayers' story with Brian Piccolo had already been immortalized in the Emmy-winning film Brian's Song, which aired in 1971 and starred Billy D. Williams as Gale and James Caan as Brian. The film became a cultural touchstone, not just for sports fans, but for anyone who believed in friendship, loyalty, and courage in the face of death. The emotional depth of their relationship helped redefine what male friendship could look like on-screen, particularly in an era where such displays of affection and vulnerability were rare. While Sayers himself had originally been reluctant to revisit the painful memories of Piccolo's death, he later embraced the film's legacy, understanding that it had helped inspire millions and bring attention to the fight against cancer. Over time, his own identity became inseparable from this legacy. He was not only a Hall of Fame player, but a symbol of emotional strength and human connection. Speaking of the Hall of Fame, Gale Sayers was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1977, just 6 years after his retirement. At the age of 34, he became the youngest player ever inducted. His speech that day was short, modest, and reflective of his personality. He never believed in drawing attention to himself unnecessarily, but there was no doubt that he belonged there. His 5-year stretch of dominance had left a greater impression than many players with twice the longevity. As Hall of Fame coach George Allen once said, Gale Sayers was the greatest halfback I ever saw. If he had not been injured, he'd be in a class with Jim Brown. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Sayers continued to appear in public regularly at NFL events, alumni gatherings, charity functions, and community programs. He became a respected elder statesman of the game, known for his quiet wisdom and his tireless advocacy for youth sports and education. He published his autobiography, I Am Third, which further elaborated on the principles he lived by: God first, family second, and himself third. The book became a bestseller and later inspired the title and theme of Brian's song. However, in his later years, Sayers faced a far more personal and painful challenge. In 2012, it was publicly revealed that he had been diagnosed with dementia. His wife, Ardithe Sayers, who had long supported him with quiet strength, became his primary caregiver and advocate. She later spoke out about the emotional and financial toll of the disease, as well as the frustration of seeing someone so vibrant, so full of life, fade into confusion and silence. In a haunting twist of fate, one of the most agile and quick-thinking players the NFL had ever known was now losing his memory, his ability to recall games, names, and even his own accomplishments. Many observers, including medical professionals and former teammates, believed his cognitive decline was linked to repeated head trauma suffered during his playing days. His case added to the growing discussion surrounding chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a neurodegenerative disease caused by repeated brain injuries. Sayers' battle with dementia sparked further national dialogue about player safety, the long-term effects of concussions, and the responsibility of the NFL to its former stars. He became yet another face in the growing number of ex-players whose post-career lives were shaped by the harsh physical consequences of the sport they once loved. Despite these struggles, the love for Gale Sayers never diminished. Fans across generations remembered his incredible performances, his humility, and his grace. He remained a legend not just in Chicago, but across the football world. His number 40 jersey became iconic, and highlight reels of his dazzling runs continued to circulate among new fans discovering his brilliance for the first time. On September 23, 2020, Gale Sayers passed away at the age of 77. The tributes were immediate and widespread. The NFL, former players, media, and fans all paid their respects. Bears chairman George McCaskey described him as one of the finest men in NFL history. Hall of Fame President David Baker said, Gale was one of the greatest to ever step on a football field. He was an extraordinary man who overcame adversity and defined excellence with class and dignity. His death marked the end of an era, but not the end of his influence. Gale Sayers lives on in the memories of those who watched him play, in the film that captured his friendship with Brian Piccolo, and in the young lives he impacted through mentorship and advocacy. What made Sayers special wasn't just what he did, it was how he did it. He played the game with purity, with beauty, and with a sense of freedom that inspired awe. He didn't need a long career to etch his name into history. In fact, his brief, blazing journey through the NFL became part of the mythology of the game, like a shooting star that burns brighter and faster than all the others. For football historians, Gale Sayers remains a symbol of excellence. For fans, he is remembered with admiration and reverence. For his family and friends, he was a man of principle, love, and quiet strength. And for all of us, his story is a reminder that greatness isn't always measured in years or championships, but in the moments that take our breath away. From the fields of Omaha to the bright lights of Chicago, From the glory of Sunday afternoons to the quiet struggles of his later life, Gale Sayers embodied what it meant to be a true sportsman. And though his heart once came close to giving out, in the end, it was that very heart, full of grace, courage, and kindness, that defined his legacy.